So thank you all for sitting in and joining me for today's session. I have the beauty of going early on this morning, which means that given the kind of content of the last session, maybe you're not at your quota for hearing the phrases AI and agentic yet, but by the time we get to the end of my session, I would have blown through that quota drastically. So hold on to your seatbelts, it's going to be a wild ride. My name is Tom Christian. I'm a principal AI specialist for EMEA at Snowflake. I've actually been coming to Big Data London for what has been years, and it's actually a delight to be here on this stage as opposed to just confined to my booth. So they've let me out, and I'm really excited to talk through today's session, which is building agentic-ready AI-native platforms. So again, I've probably already exceeded the quota. We've not even left the first slide. Now, for legal purposes, I have to put this slide up. This is just saying that some of the features, if I talk about them, are in public preview, and essentially you can't sue me for that. So now that we've covered that, we're all on a level playing ground. So, to almost summarize the talk that just happened, I heard this repeated a lot. We're all data practitioners one way or the other. The wonderful thing in my role specifically is I get to see a lot of real-world AI engagements. I get to see the kind of nitty-gritty stuff when it comes to actually deploying AI for real. And the one learning from the past 2 to 3 years that everybody's been running with AI is the fact that to run with AI, AI itself is incredibly magical. It actually surprises me every single day in the things that it's capable of doing. But the one thing it is not is it's not all-knowing, all-encompassing, and especially when it comes to your organization and your world, your data. And because of that, without your data, AI is nothing. And more importantly, when it comes to using AI, if you're not using AI with the intent of actually changing something and actually achieving value from that, then also why are you using AI to begin with? We almost have to start asking these hard questions. Now, with that in mind, things have changed a lot over the past 12 months, enormously. In fact, you heard about new standards, new initiatives, new ways to do things. And to me, the largest change in the last 12 months is the fact that now we call that middle bucket agentic AI. But the problem remains the same. Agentic AI is capable, it's incredible, it's taking action. But without your data, it's nothing. And if it's not there to do something, then what's the point? And to put this into perspective, I've been in the world of analytics for over a decade. I've built some incredibly pretty dashboards. Some of those dashboards, I have spent an unhealthy amount of time designing the color palette to that dashboard. The reality is that nobody cares. I care deeply, but nobody else cares. So what was the point? And if you think about this from the world of analytics, unless that thing that you're delivering enables somebody to take an action and do something, then again, that's where the true value lies. And when it comes to agents, again, I get the virtue of explaining agents given the fact that I'm up early enough. Agents are there really to be autonomous. They're here to bring about this golden age of autonomous AI, where AI is capable of delivering upon action in order to do some type of outcome. They're able to plan, enable tools, they're able to track what they're doing, reflect on what they're doing. But for me, I like to distill this down into kind of one phrase, and I'm going to try and make this memorable for everyone, which is that AI is agentic AI, I should say, is all about action. And there's nothing more memorable than cyberpunk 80s cats. So again, if you are delivering on AI, agentic AI, you have to be grounded in action. And in fact, the formatting is there, so you can't even see action. You just have to remember that it's hidden behind the cat. But when we come to reality, again, I've worked with many customers. The reality is so many projects still fail. Are they too ambitious? Are they trying to do things that aren't achievable? Do they just still not have the data there? That's kind of one of the classic challenges. And the thing that's really depressing for me personally is that the challenges that you see here on the screen, the setup, the data, the security, these are old school challenges, right? There are many of us in this room that have been trying to tackle these challenges for a long, long time, and yet here they are. It's old school problems preventing us from enacting this new age of, golden AI outcomes. And the reality is when we peel off the cover, it's easy to see why. On top of an agent, it's not just data. There's the orchestration, the integration, the data engineering, the governance, the storage. Absolutely all of these things have to be in place in order to be successful. In fact, to quote somebody from an AWS conference not too long ago, they said that whenever they're given an AI project these days, they consider it a data project from the start. In fact, AI is the fancy bit at the end that you get to tack on once you've finished your data project. But the wonderful thing is, again, I've sat through so many customers that are running with AI, and the ROI and value that they are achieving from this is obscene. They're actually, again, they're almost too large to stick on slides, so we have to find other metrics to make it sound impressive, but not too impressive. Otherwise, it doesn't feel real. Now, if you're wondering why nothing beats a Jet2 holiday, book now and you can save £50. Is the reason Jet2 use AI with Snowflake. And every time somebody calls in to say, hey, I want to change a booking, I have a problem with my hotel, I'd like to do X, Y, Z, maybe extend my stay. They're analyzing all of these transcripts to find out what it is their customers really want and understand, which enables them to, again, data is one thing, the transcripts that are there, the value and business transformation they're getting out of this is the fact that when customers call in, maybe at scale with a unique problem that's happening somewhere in a remote location, they can find out that's happening in minutes rather than days. The RAC, who are also here, they're actually on stage talking about what they're doing with AI later today. So if you're interested in finding that out, they've got a talk either 2 or 2:30, I forget, but come see them. They're doing wonderful things. So all of these customers that I've had the privilege of working with tend to have common success points, common points that allow them to run with AI. And if you're sat here thinking, I would love to run with AI, or the flip side of this, which is my CEO is telling me to run with AI, I'm scared, help. We've distilled this down into a framework that makes it easy to remember. And everyone loves an acronym, so we've built an acronym and we've called it GATE analysis. Look at that, it's got AI in the acronym about AI. How cool is that? I'm a very sad individual. GATE obviously stands for governance, agility, integration, and trust. It has nothing to do with treadmills and running performance. I have terrible hips, but that's a separate conversation. These 4 key pillars are the things that we come back to time and time again when we can determine whether or not an AI project will succeed or fail. And to walk you through all of these pillars and understand and peel back the curtain of how you can be successful in this area, I'll spend the next 18 minutes and 42 seconds telling you how to do that. And we'll start with governance. Governance has been talked about a lot in the previous session. I was listening in actively, and there's some pretty key things just to reiterate. But governance is a wonderful thing when it comes to enabling people to securely access the data that they are allowed to access. Again, it can be a blocker and a prevention, or it can be an enabler. That's the critical thing with governance. And when it comes to AI in particular, AI opened up this whole ream of new challenges, because all of a sudden, the moment you could stick a document into your favorite AI-powered chat service, all of a sudden this becomes a problem, because historically nobody cared. Nobody cared about chat logs. Nobody cared about emails to a degree, depending on where you're sending them and what you're saying. Nobody really cared about images, irrespective of whether they were 80s cyberpunk cats. Then all of a sudden AI allows you to make sense of this information at scale. And because you want to make sense of this information at scale, governance comes in. And because governance comes in, everyone knows this familiar story, which is governance gets slapped onto everything, and what that means is nobody can access the data, and we're kind of locked out of the entire process. The critical thing when it comes to unstructured information and governance is to follow the same patterns we've been doing for analytical data for years and years and years, which is essentially building governance frameworks that allow people to speak to data, to actually interrogate that data, access the data in a way that, again, is comfortable for everybody. When it comes to Snowflake, the critical thing is, again, if you're unaware, Snowflake has a wonderful Cortex AI platform, a platform within a platform. It's in our view that governance policies should be applied as early on as they possibly can be. The reason why is then once they're applied early on, once the data is activated by solutions like OpenFlow that allow you to access all types of data, it can then follow that data right the way through to the point your agent asks that question. So that's a critical point because the interest in AI is pushing increasingly leftwards. How can we get as close to the raw data as we can humanly possibly get? But then the flip side of that is now all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of new consumers that want to ask questions of data. So how do we give them that insight in a way that they're not going to ask a question that's going to give them something they shouldn't know? And this is why governance policies that follow the data throughout are critically important. The one thing, and it was given in, it was announced, and actually they had a slide for it, and I don't have a slide for it, which makes me feel bad, announced yesterday as a new semantic standard, OSI, where it's Snowflake, Salesforce, dbt, and many others, including Sigma and others in the hall. We're actually defining semantic ontologies as a standard. Why that's super important is because nobody wants to define semantics multiple times. Being able to define them once, have them apply across multiple systems, means that you're not going to be locked into catalogs that are going to try and bog you down and slow you down when it comes to the fact that nobody has a singular platform for all their data everywhere. The critical thing, I just mentioned Sigma. Sigma summed up this process of, again, unstructured being a bottleneck historically. Nobody could use it in the past. It just became that endpoint. But Mike Palmer, the CEO of Sigma, sums this up wonderfully, just saying that when you're using systems like Snowflake Cortex, being able to interrogate that data easily in a trusted way, all of a sudden removes that analytical bottleneck, and you're able to speak to data at scale, get insights from data at scale. So if anyone can find me that unstructured data as the thing I always dreamed of as being a kid hat, I'll be very grateful when I read out this slide next time. The second and third pillars are agility and integration. I've actually combined the two to be super agile. How about that? And also it means I can write AI in another slide. But the critical thing in agility and integration is the entire world is, again, trying to run with AI. Everyone feels behind. The reality is we're all the same. But everyone feels behind because of pressures, but equally, the entire world, given standards, given the fact that, again, you look at MCP, A2A, and many others, this is an open, integrated ecosystem that you have to connect with. And again, sorry for the formatting, it's Google Slides to PowerPoint. One of the critical things, back to our horrible iceberg slide, is the fact that there are so many components that need to be managed and maintained when it comes to building an AI solution, particularly when it's agentic. And again, that extends beyond just the application interface into even the tooling itself. So how do you enable this at scale and act on this quickly? One of the things that we've been, again, very fundamental in doing when it comes to Snowflake is building what is the Cortex Agents data platform. Cortex Agents framework. This is almost a modular platform within a platform, again, a bit, I can't remember the word, but it's recurring at least. So the Cortex Agents framework is a modular framework that allows you to access data agents that you can speak to your data in an easy modular fashion. So if you want to access structured data, there's built-in tooling under Cortex Analyst that allows you to retrieve high-quality results when talking to structured data natively. Likewise, Cortex Search for when it comes to unstructured data retrieval, being able to access that data in a simple way that exceeds on most benchmarks, but again is critical when it comes to retrieving accurate results. All of this is available through a simple UI that you can access through Snowflake. So rather than, again, going and building all of those various different components, we've wrapped them in a framework and presented a UI that you can just start building upon. So it makes it easy to speak to data. But one of the other learnings from, again, the past 3 years is the fact that change management is still a thing. Gosh, who would have known? And because change management is a thing and users don't like changing, this is a reality that we all live in, irrespective of if you slap an AI sticker on it or not, we have to deploy where users are already. And one of the things on the previous slide, that was Snowflake Intelligence, the UI that you can easily speak to data, the most common question I get from that is, okay, that's great, but I've got a place that my users go to. Can I integrate that there? The fundamental thing when it comes to these API frameworks is being able to deploy them wherever you see fit, wherever your users are already. The Cortex Agent framework is no different to that. You'll be able to integrate it with Slack, Teams, your application of choice, and including other agent chatbots that many of you in this room have likely already built already. Being able to integrate them natively means that you can take that same framework, the same high quality speak to your data framework, and deploy it exactly where you need to quickly. Be agile in that nature. To almost peel that back a bit, when you're wondering, well, what's included in this Cortex Data Agents framework? It incorporates planning, memory, tool use, reflection. So you can ask a question, it can determine that it needs to generate SQL to speak to structured data. Once it gets to that point, it'll use the appropriate tool and reflect whether or not those answers make sense. This is where AI gets scary, but equally super capable. Because the moment it can go, that's not quite right, let me try this again, all of a sudden there's not thinking, they don't technically think, but there's that layer of accuracy that you just get a boost because it's able to identify anomalies in the conversation. All of this is included as part of the Cortex Agents framework, but the one thing I do want to point out is this middle layer is the most important point. The framework in itself is wonderful. The fact that you're able to build these agents quickly at the click of a button is cool, but they are incapable of really doing anything cool until they have the tools that support them. And so these tools are the fundamental make or break for every single agent that everyone will ever talk to you about today. So how do you get access to more tools? How do you get access to more capabilities to enrich your agents so that they can become more capable? One of the fundamental things from the Snowflake perspective is we've always built on this foundation of the Snowflake marketplace. The Snowflake marketplace has always been a wonderful place to get access to data. And data is a great thing for AI because you need it to make sense of the world. But Snowflake's marketplace extends beyond just data, it extends into applications. So if you need to do graph analytics, you're able to bring in a Pinecone or a relational AI into Snowflake to build your graph database there. You can also build computer vision models using the likes of Landing AI. One of the things that's actually really cool and possibly underused is the fact that down here in the bottom right, I think it's in the wrong place, I should stick it front and center, is if your agent needs access to the latest, greatest news of what's going on. So you're building a travel agent, it needs to know if there are world events that might impact, again, hotel bookings. You can actually bring in data from the Associated Press at a click of a button. And not only is it just data, they've actually built what is a search service that your agent can immediately tap into. So when you ask a question like, what's going on in Greece today, it'll actually pull through news articles from the Associated Press and return that to your agent. I think that's awesome. It's giving it this world view automatically at a click of a button. And I'm actually slightly ahead of time. I spoke too quickly. But we're on to the final one, which is trust and evaluation, which means I can slow down and we can play a little game for everyone that's in the room. If you're in one of the other rooms, I can't count your hands, so good luck. And the big question here is, who do you trust? Can I get a show of hands for who trusts the person more? I was going to say, there's literally no one for a second. Okay. And who trusts the machine more? Okay, about 3 people. So if you're in one of the other rooms, the people that took part, thank you very much, most people said the person. And I think that's what I expected when I built this together. The reason why I expected this outcome is we're coming from a world of determinability. So if you think of business intelligence as a grounding for AI analytics, you know that that dashboard you go to has been looked at some point by somebody you hopefully trust, and therefore it will likely be the same thing when you come back the next day, and therefore you can account for the numbers being accurate. AI doesn't work that way. AI is non-deterministic, which means that you can ask the same question, 10 minutes, ask the same question again, and it'll just answer differently, because why not? It's flavor of the day. AI is exciting. It keeps things spicy. But the one thing I do want to point out is the fact that we get things wrong. We as people, I'm putting myself in this bucket too, I'm not a machine, get things wrong all the time. This is something we commonly do, and we're very good at getting things wrong. So does AI, I should point that out. We're both equally wrong. Somebody said this to me once, and it's stuck, and this is why I'm slowing down a little bit, because I think everyone should think this way as well, which is the reason we trust the person on the left, sorry, screen's flipped here. The person on the left is the fact that there'll be consequences. And I was like, hang on, this is Johnny as a family of 4. What consequences are we talking about? Just to reassure everyone, John's not real. But in the sense of consequences can also be rephrased as accountability. Now, you can hold a person accountable to their mistakes, and they can promise you they'll never do it again. They'll make mistakes again. We're all human. But how do you hold a machine accountable? Especially when you consider the fact that an AI agent, God, that's too many clicks, bear with me, has so many points of failure. The moment you ask a question, it has to plan. First of all, did it even understand what the user was asking? Once it then figures out if it understood it or not, it has to try and reason and correctly pick the next tool. Once it's picked the correct tool, well then, what's the quality of that tooling? I just said tooling's the most important thing within an agent framework. If those tools are awful, then that entire flow fails. And then once you've actually pulled back, what's the quality? If your data was awful, your tool could have been great, your agent could have understood it, but it's bringing back wrong data. Now, I see comfort in this diagram. This is going to sound bizarre, but I really do. And the reason why is because we know where these fail points are. And once we know where these fail points are, we can put systems in place to monitor them. We can't do the same with people. I had a night last night when my 2-year-old daughter woke up at 4 a.m. laughing. Great for her, not for me. It means I'm slightly on edge this morning. That's a failure point. I could have just been a bit of a daze when I get on stage. That happens all the time. We can't account for these things with people, but with machines, we can at least put frameworks in to try and catch those moments of failure. Oh, there's one more as well. Data quality again. 2 more. So when it comes to a Snowflake perspective, there are 3 areas that are really worth tracking when it comes to delivering AI projects. The first is putting trust into consumers. Now, so many of you being here, by virtue of being here, you are AI aware, at least. And because you're AI aware, you already know the fact that these tools have come on leaps and bounds in the past 2 years to the point that you could have asked a question even 12 months ago, and most AI systems would have just made a mess of it. And you ask the same questions today, and they smash it. And it's scary when you see that change. Consumers don't typically have the same response. They're one step removed, and they know that they shouldn't trust AI. So you have to put in systems to ensure that they can trust the responses. Our approach from a Snowflake perspective is adding that deterministic nature back into the agent tooling. So when you actually issue a query, such as how does my segment of my customers performed over the past 3 quarters, if somebody's asked that question before, and somebody, a data steward, has gone through and verified that response and said, yeah, good job, then that actually comes back the next time and says, this has been verified by this person, you can trust it. This is actually quite interesting because not only does it add humans, and again, humans still make mistakes, back into the loop, it also adds accountability because it says verified by Tom Christian. In other words, if it's still wrong, you know who to go to this time and tell them off. The security and access pillar in the middle really is just reassuring your CISOs. So ensuring that when you're accessing these agents, back to that governance point, the very first pillar, you're not all of a sudden going to access data you shouldn't be able to. From a Snowflake point of view, role-based access policies flow through that system. So the moment I come along and try and get access to my CEO's payslip in the HR data, it's going to say, you can't see that. Role-based access policies still apply, data masking still applies, go away, leave me alone as an AI agent. They'll definitely say that. But the final point is, as an owner, you need to be able to check and see everything that agent does. So when it responds, you can have that confidence that it's responding accurately and, again, in a way that you expect. This is where observability and traceability comes in. So if you think about every step an agent does, planning, tool selection, response generation, being able to see and record every one of those elements is critical. Because the moment a user goes, I didn't like that answer, you can actually go back and see the steps that agent took, identify that point of failure, and then go back and correct it for future use. I've got 1 minute and 30 seconds. My final recap point is all of this is hugely important. But again, if your data is still a steaming pile of, then it doesn't matter. But more importantly, gate is the one thing that you should all walk away with. Check on your governance. Act in an agile way. Build in an integrated manner, and put trust for your users as well as yourselves at the forefront. They're just a few of the reasons why we have thousands and thousands of customers using AI with Snowflake, which includes the likes of Jet2, Nissan, Marriott, Sigma, Whoop, more, all running with AI to date. And if this interests you, I'm going to stick around for questions. More importantly, go follow the big giant blue Snowflake Met Office banner at the back. You'll find our stand. Come talk to us there. We'll be happy to speak to you. But it's been a pleasure this morning, and enjoy the rest of the conference.